every argument you entered, every explanation you offered when accused, every defense you mounted when silence would have crushed them. You handed them your power like a beggar offering coins to a thief. You felt the heat rise in your chest. Words spilled from your mouth before your mind could intervene, and afterward, that sickening recognition, that hollow shame. You replayed it for hours, days. You saw exactly where you broke, where you leaked, where you transformed from a man who commands respect into a man who begs for understanding. Weak men react, they justify, they chase closure like dogs chasing their own tails, and in that frantic motion they reveal everything, their fears, their wounds, their desperation to be understood. Powerful men do none of this. Powerful men become the void. They let others scream into the abyss and watch as that abyss swallows them whole. Tonight you master the void. Tonight you learn to wield the silence that breaks minds. Once you grasp what follows, no argument, no accusation, no provocation will ever extract another drop of blood from your veins. You will become untouchable. You will become the cold that freezes their confidence mid-sentence. You will become sovereign. An Athenian strategist once faced public slander in the agora. His accuser hurled venom, listed crimes, demanded response. The crowd waited for the rebuttal that never came. The strategist stood in perfect stillness, silent, cold, unmoved, and in that absence of defense something shifted. The crowd's suspicion turned, not toward the accused, toward the accuser. Why does this man scream so loudly? What does he fear in the silence? Within days, the accuser was ruined, not by words, by void. Niccolò Machiavelli watched princes rise and fall in the courts of Florence and Rome. He observed what destroyed men of power and what preserved them. And he wrote this truth that echoes through centuries: the prince who reveals his hand loses the game before it begins. Silence is not absence. Silence is strategy. The prince who speaks least rules longest because he gives his enemies nothing to grasp, nothing to twist, nothing to use. His intentions remain smoke. His thoughts remain shadow. And in that shadow, fear grows like a tumor in the minds of those who oppose him. Most men today erupt in conflict like children. They explain themselves to those who deserve no explanation. They defend themselves to those who deserve only contempt. They chase the approval of people they should be making uncomfortable. You will not be that man, not after tonight. Silence is your throne. The void is your weapon. And from this moment forward, you will rule from that cold, dark seat. Observe what unfolds in the human mind when you withhold words in the heat of conflict. The brain expects a pattern: attack, defense, accusation, explanation. This is the rhythm of every weak exchange between weak men. But when you break that pattern, when you offer only silence where words are expected, something clinical occurs, something you can exploit. First comes confusion. Their neural pathways are prepared for combat, primed for your response, armed with counter-arguments they have been rehearsing. Your silence renders those weapons useless. They stand there holding ammunition for a war you refuse to fight. This confusion creates a pause, and in that pause, doubt enters. Then comes the spiral. Without your words to react against, they begin reacting against themselves. Their own accusations echo back to them. They hear the venom in their voice, and suddenly it sounds excessive, unhinged. They watch you standing in cold composure and feel their own heat as weakness. The contrast becomes unbearable. They begin to question whether they overreacted, whether they misread, whether they have exposed themselves as the unstable one. This is where the obsession takes root. In the hours after the encounter, they replay the exchange, over and over. But there is nothing from you to analyze, no words to dissect, only the image of your still face, your unmoved posture, your devastating calm. They draft messages they never send, explanations you never asked for, apologies for anger you never acknowledged. They delete and rewrite, trapped in a prison you built with nothing but absence. Physically, the symptoms manifest: restless nights, thoughts that intrude during work, a compulsion to check for your response that never comes. They tell themselves they do not care, but they refresh the screen. They walk past your door hoping for a glance. They mention you to mutual contacts, fishing for information, hating themselves for the need. You have done nothing. You have said nothing. And yet you have become the silence that echoes in their skull. Inescapable. This is the void. This is your weapon. And tonight, you learn to wield it with surgical precision. 7 ways to wield the void that makes others lose control. 1. When accused, do not defend. The instinct to explain yourself is the instinct of the servant, not the sovereign. When someone levels an accusation, they hand you a script. They expect you to justify, to clarify, to reveal. Your defense becomes admission of their authority to judge you. Instead, you offer nothing, a look, perhaps a slow blink. Then you continue as if they had not spoken. Machiavelli observed that princes who explained themselves to subjects were treated as subjects themselves. Your silence communicates something their ears cannot hear but their gut understands. I do not answer to you. This is how silence establishes hierarchy without a single word. 2. Let their anger burn itself out. Fire requires fuel. Their rage, their frustration, their emotional eruption, these flames need your reaction to sustain themselves. When you offer no resistance, no counterattack, no engagement, the fire has nothing to consume except the one who started it. Sun Tzu wrote that the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. Let them exhaust themselves. Let them swing at air until their arms ache. Let them hear their own voice growing shrill in the silence you provide. Like a torch thrown into an empty pit, their fury will consume only itself. This is how silence becomes annihilation through patience. 3. Withhold closure absolutely. Weak men cannot tolerate open loops. They need resolution, understanding, mutual acknowledgement that the conflict has ended. This need is a leash, and most men wear it gladly. You will cut that leash tonight. When conflicts occur, you end them by withdrawal, not resolution. No final word, no concluding statement, no agreement to disagree. You simply remove your presence and attention, leaving them suspended in incompletion. The ancient kings understood this. A petitioner left, waiting indefinitely, is a petitioner reminded of his insignificance. A conflict left unresolved in your favor is a conflict where you held all leverage. They will ache for the closure you refuse to grant. That ache becomes your permanent residence in their thoughts. This is how silence creates haunting. 4. Respond to aggression with stillness. When voices rise, yours falls to nothing. When bodies lean forward in confrontation, yours remains planted in cold immobility. This contrast is not passive. It is the most aggressive act possible. It communicates that their escalation does not warrant your participation, that their storm does not disturb your waters. Machiavelli noted that the prince who remains unmoved while others rage appears to stand above the chaos, outside its reach, beyond its jurisdiction. Your stillness becomes an indictment of their loss of composure. They feel the judgment without you speaking it. They see themselves through your unblinking eyes and recognize their own grotesque desperation. This is how silence becomes a mirror that wounds. 5. Let silence follow their insults. When they strike with words designed to provoke, let those words fall into the void. Do not laugh them off. This still acknowledges the attempt. Do not return insult. This accepts their invitation to the mud. Simply pause. Let the silence stretch until it becomes uncomfortable. Not for you, for them, for everyone watching. In ancient courts, the king who did not rise to the jester's barbs proved he was king, and the jester was furniture. Your silence after their insult is a demonstration of category. They have revealed themselves as someone who throws stones. You have revealed yourself as someone who watches stones fall short. This is how silence demonstrates superiority without claiming it. 6. Vanish mid-conflict. The most devastating void is physical absence. When conflict rises to a certain pitch, when their emotional investment reaches its peak, you simply leave. No announcement, no exit statement, no dramatic flourish. You remove yourself from the space, you remove yourself from their access. Like fog that dissipates just as they reach to grasp it. This triggers a specific panic. They were prepared for escalation, for battle, for the satisfaction of resolution or victory. Your disappearance denies all of this. Sun Tzu taught that the greatest warriors control when and where battle occurs. By vanishing, you control both. You choose neither. And they stand alone in a room made emptier by your absence, swinging at ghosts. This is how silence creates abandonment that burns. 7. Maintain the void in the aftermath. Most men ruin their victories. They hold power through silence during conflict, then bleed it away through reconciliation after. They accept the apology. They engage the extended olive branch. They allow the relationship to normalize before the lesson has penetrated bone. You will not make this error. After conflict, the void continues. Not permanently, but long enough for the weight to become unbearable. Long enough for every day of your absence to teach them what your presence costs. Long enough for them to understand that access to you is a privilege they revoked and must now earn back through demonstrated change. The ancient princes kept disgraced courtiers waiting for months before granting audience. That waiting was the punishment. That waiting was the education. This is how silence teaches consequences that words never could. You now possess 7 blades most men will never sharpen. 7 ways to wield the void that makes others lose control while you remain carved from stone. Wield them coldly. Wield them without mercy. Wield them in utter silence. You no longer react. You no longer explain. You no longer bleed in conflict. The version of you that justified himself to unworthy judges is dead. The version of you that chased closure from those who deserved only distance is buried. The version of you that erupted in heat and regretted in shame has been executed by the colder, harder man you are becoming. This is the moment you cease being the fool who argues at the level of his accusers. This is the moment you become the shadow that commands without speaking. This is the moment you step into the void and make it your kingdom. You are now untouchable. You are now silent. You are now sovereign. If these words cut where you needed cutting, inscribe in the comments, "The void conquers." Write it and mean it. Let it seal what you have learned tonight in something more permanent than memory. Like this video. Subscribe to this channel. Turn on notifications. These are not requests. They are instructions for the man who recognizes what he has been given here. Weak men will argue with their screens tonight. They will write comments defending their need to speak, their compulsion to explain, their addiction to being understood. Powerful men will close this video in silence and act. They will enter their next conflict as different men. They will watch others flail against their stillness and feel nothing but cold satisfaction. Which one are you? The answer is not in what you say. The answer is in what you withhold, in the arguments you never have, in the justifications you never offer, in the void you become when lesser men expect you to break. In the end, all empires fall to silence, either the silence they wield or the silence that swallows them. You now choose which silence is yours.